Hello everybody, Simon Dixon back, and this is my third video on the Israeli-Gaza situation leading up to the broadcast I'll be doing on following the money and understanding the financial flows. So firstly, way more important than money is life, and it is getting worse and more tragic by the day. Be careful of what media you consume. The media has clearly got an agenda, and you can really see the difference. And I suggest watching both sides, as well as some of the alternative media. If you want to understand what's going on inside Gaza, then Al Jazeera is the place to go to. Now, people will criticize that because it's funded by Qatar, and Qatar will have a particular message and agenda, but still it's completely undeniable looking at the footage and really getting inside what's actually happening, because those that are watching CNN or Fox, or just really have, the algorithm within TikTok is only showing you videos that are in line with your ideology or the people that you're following, you will get a completely different picture. And either side will be accusing each other of being manipulated. We are all being manipulated, and we all need to commit to one thing, and that is trying to suspend bias and getting to the truth. For me, the truth is taking me closer and closer, and I'm sure if you're anything like me, you've been down a massive rabbit hole of education. As I said, when I first started this video series, I will stay in my lane and I will be covering the financial side, because inevitably, whenever I do this exercise, it ends up with some of the monetary flows between countries and the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. I'm getting closer and closer to being able to share what I think is happening here with the monetary flows. But at the same time, as I said, I have to put on these different hats. The humanitarian side of me is getting more and more despondent at the moment. The death and the destruction is reaching unbearable levels right now, and it looks like it's only going to get worse. So as we currently speak, it looks like the strategy, and there has been documents released that this was the strategy all along, is to push people out of Gaza into Egypt. And there's some kind of deal being negotiated where where Egypt may be able to cancel some of its IMF debt in exchange for taking on and completely displacing the Palestinian people. And so we need to really be aware of this and understand and reach our conclusions about what is right here. So again, in line with staying in my lane, as many people criticize, I've been called an anti-Semitic, a terrorist empathizer, simply for calling for peace and believing in a ceasefire. As I've said in previous videos, my mother is Jewish, my late father is Christian, my family is Muslim, and I see things from all different perspectives. And I'll share more about my faith in later videos as well, because many people seem to be asking. But to me, this is a humanitarian crisis. We are seeing war crimes where, complete oppression led to unthinkable acts of terror. And then the media said that everything started on the 7th of October. And then the alternative media is trying to let you know that there is way more to this. And there was a history that led to a backlash from the oppression that has been retaliated with the West and America. Really, one person, Joe Biden, right now could decide or could change the course of financial history, the human lives and suffering, death and destruction, and a potential escalation to World War III. So whoever influences Joe Biden, and Joe Biden being the ultimate figurehead and decision maker, everything is within your hands right now, as it was on October the 7th, when rather than saying what it is and condemning the acts of terror, but also recognizing that a solution needs to be negotiated and de-escalating, he chose to take us on a path that I'm very fearful will lead to an outright world war. I think by the end of this week, by the time I go live, we're probably going to see escalation and retaliation as a result of the atrocities and war crimes that Israel is inflicting upon Palestine and in Gaza at the moment. The West Bank, which is not which doesn't have control by Hamas, is also being going through this, as well as Gaza in their mission to deliver collective punishment on everybody in order to try and eliminate Hamas, where people in the West, in their homes, and I'm obviously in a place of privilege, but people are cheering on the side, and we need to commit to the truth, because whatever is happening right now is going to have major impacts on all of us if this escalates to a world war, which is the current path that I'm seeing in front of us right now. So in this video, I wanted to answer the question, not a question I necessarily knew how to answer, but I just wanted to share with you some of the clips that I found useful in trying to come to my conclusion. Many people, there is a counter side to this story, you know, and a theological, religious side of land being promised by God. And we can cover that in a future video, because I have lots of different thoughts on the theological side. But in terms of what has happened since the last and previous world wars and what happened prior to the previous world wars, I think these clips will help you in determining what actually happened here leading up to October the 7th, and answer the question, or at least inspire research, or at least inspire you to comment on how you think these are completely wrong in the comments below. And so with that in mind, I'm now going to shift over to some of the clips that answer the question, who owns Israel?
We had several other people in the country, even among the Jews, the Zionists particularly, who were against anything that was to be done if they couldn't have the whole of Palestine and everything handed to them on a silver plate so they wouldn't have to do anything. It couldn't be done. We had to take it in small doses. You can't move 5 or 6 million people out of a country and fill it up with 5 or 6 million more and expect both sets of them to be pleased.
49.
But don't think that decision to recognize Israel was an easy one. I had to make a compromise with the Arabs and divide Palestine. The Jews wanted to chase all the Arabs into the Tigris and Euphrates River, and the Arabs wanted to chase all the Jews into the Red Sea. And what I was trying to do was to find a homeland for the Jews and still be just with the Arabs.
When you think Palestine, you may think violence, land seizures, and a decades-long Israeli occupation. But what you might not know is that another country played a driving role in causing the region's conflict: Imperial Britain. From 1516 to at least 1917, Palestine was under the control of the Ottoman Empire, a religiously diverse land where Christians, Muslims, and Jews lived alongside one another at peace for the most part. Then in the early 1900s, a small number of European Jews were trying to drum up support for Zionism and the establishment of a Jewish homeland. Just 20 years before, in 1897, the movement led by Theodor Herzl was initiated at a conference in Switzerland. They decided that they would advocate for a Jewish homeland in Palestine, but the movement at the time didn't have much support. And at the time, only around 8% of the population of Palestine was Jewish. At the same time, Arab nationalism was on the rise and many Palestinians wanted an independent state. Imperial Britain knew of both the ambitions of Zionists and Palestinians and used the situation to bolster their own interests. In 1914, amid World War I, Britain went to war with the Ottoman Empire. And in 1915, Henry McMahon, Britain's representative in Cairo, approached Arab leaders with a proposal. Britain would agree to Arab independence if they helped fight against the Ottomans. Then in 1917, Britain's Foreign Secretary wrote a one-paragraph letter to Walter Rothschild, a leading figure in the British Jewish community. It read, "His Majesty's government views with favour the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavours to facilitate the achievement of this object." This letter became known as the Balfour Declaration, and it was in stark contrast to a declaration of the British and French armies in 1918, which assured the people of Syria, Palestine, and Mesopotamia of autonomy. So what was going on? Britain had promised independence to the Arabs that lived in Palestine, but then also promised a homeland for Jews on land that was already inhabited. Was Britain just transferring land that did not belong to them to whoever they liked? When the Ottoman Empire collapsed in 1918, the League of Nations gave Britain a mandate or administrative control of Palestine in 1920. It was a dual mandate. On one hand, they were to act on behalf of Palestinians, but on the other hand, they were to act on behalf of the international community of Jews who wanted to establish a homeland. Britain then drew up arbitrary borders, transferring the eastern bank of the Jordan River to the Hashemites. It was under the British mandate that Jews from Europe began to immigrate to Palestine and buy up land. The Jewish population in Palestine grew tenfold, from 60,000 to more than 600,000 between 1918 and 1947. Many Palestinians saw the mass influx of Jews as a European colonial movement, so as one might expect, it led to conflict. In 1929, riots broke out at the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem. Both Palestinians and Jews lost lives. In 1936, after Jewish immigration increased even more riots broke out. This time, the British were heavy-handed and killed between 2,000 and 5,000 Palestinians. A Royal British Commission concluded that because Britain had allowed mass immigration, Palestine had two distinct societies that couldn't be reconciled. They recommended a partition of the land. The Arab Higher Committee rejected this, saying it was all their land. Britain then banned the Arab Higher Commission. They introduced the White Paper of 1939. It stated that Palestine should be a binational state inhabited by Jews and Palestinians, but that Jewish immigration would be limited for 5 years. But illegal immigration still went on, and violence continued to erupt. And when Britain couldn't handle the mess they had a part in creating, they handed the country back to the UN in 1948. The UN then decided to partition Palestine. The story gets a lot more complicated after this, but the British promising land which already belonged to Palestinians to other people has played a part in decades of conflict and bloodshed.
Palestine and Israel. It's complicated. Well, at least that's what some people would like you to think. We've long been sold the narrative of a tit-for-tat skirmish of rockets, a real estate dispute, or even a centuries-old religious feud. There's so much more to the story of Palestine we all need to know. So, how did we get here? Let's take it back to the beginning. It starts with the end of a world war, Muslims fighting each other, and a promise made by the West only a century ago. So here's how the story begins. It's 1916, and the First World War is raging on. The Ottoman Empire is 617 years old at this point and is on the brink of collapse. The British and the French had promised the Arabs sovereignty and Arab leadership over the Arabian Peninsula and the Levant if they helped them defeat the Ottomans. And so the Arabs said, okay, and so they helped them defeat the Ottomans. Now I know what you're thinking. What's this got to do with Palestine and the creation of Israel? Just trust me, we'll get there. Okay, so when the British and the French won, the Arabs wanted the land that was promised to them, but little did they know, the British and the French had this little top-secret meeting. And in this top-secret meeting, it was planned that the captured Ottoman province will be divided into areas of British and French control and influence. The British would receive Palestine, Jordan, and southern Iraq, while the French would control southeastern Turkey, northern Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. This was called the Sykes-Picot Agreement. But then the Arabs found out about this agreement, and they were shocked. They had been bamboozled and tricked. They thought that they were fighting a war in order to overthrow their non-Arab Muslim rulers, only to end up with, you guessed it, European colonial rulers instead. Anyway, that's a long story for another video. Now that the British occupy Palestine, something unusual is happening back in Europe. You see, the Zionist movement had been growing increasingly influential and lobbied hard to support the mass migration of Jews to Palestine and recognize a Jewish claim to the Palestinian land. And in 1917, Britain, out of nowhere, publicly declared its intentions of establishing a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. So the British just gifted Palestine, a country which was made up of 90% Palestinians, to European Zionists. They gave it just like you would give a box of chocolates. Historians still debate till this day why the British gave Palestine to Zionists. It's simply baffling. Now, at this point, the Jewish population in Palestine was less than 10%. So when the British started to facilitate the immigration of European Jews to Palestine from 1922 and 1935, the Jewish population rose to 27%. With the British mandate in full swing, mass European Jewish immigration meant that more land would be seized and the native Palestinian population grew increasingly worried. The Palestinians would demonstrate their concerns to their British overlords, but they wouldn't have it. European Jewish settlement was on the rise. The British proposed a partition of Palestine and even advised the forceful removal of the Arab population from their homes. And yes, this was their plan to resolve the issue. So the Palestinians naturally rejected this proposal and revolted against the British. The revolts were crushed violently, killing thousands of Palestinians. But the Palestinians wouldn't give up. They would continue their fight for independence, and the British were clearly fed up. So in 1947, the British decided to hand over the responsibility for Palestine to the United Nations. So basically, they just said, here, clean our mess. And so the UN proposed this ridiculous proposal again, where Palestine will be partitioned into a Jewish and Arab state. Remember, Jews in Palestine only constituted 1/3 of the population, most of whom arrived from Europe just a few years earlier. Yet, in this proposal, they were allocated 55% of the land. Feeling like they got a bad deal again, the Arabs rejected the proposal, and the Zionists accepted. However, here's the catch. The Zionists didn't agree to the proposed borders, and even campaigned for more land. So they agreed to an Israeli state, but didn't agree to the size of it, so they can just choose it for themselves. By 1948, Zionist militia would storm and capture Palestinian populated villages and cities, leaving thousands of Palestinians homeless and landless. The Zionists wanted to seize and cleanse as much land from Palestine before the British would officially withdraw their forces. And on the same day that they left, the Zionists proclaimed the establishment of the new Israeli state. Overnight, millions of Palestinians lost their country. And what's even more bizarre is that immediately the two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, recognized the new state of Israel. And if it couldn't get any worse, May 15th, 1948 was perhaps one of the darkest days in Palestine's history. They called it the Nakba, or the catastrophe. To lose your country, your identity, and your home just like that is something truly horrifying. But that wasn't enough for those Palestinian men, women, and children. They had to be ethnically cleansed from their lands and driven into near total destruction. See, the creation of the State of Israel didn't just mean that 1.9 million Palestinians were forced out of their homes. Didn't just mean that 78% of historic Palestine had been taken from its natives. Didn't just mean that 530 villages and cities were destroyed and ethnically cleansed. And didn't just mean the killing of 15,000 Palestinians in a series of mass atrocities. It means that it was the start of something even more horrifying for the Palestinian people. It signaled over 70 years of occupation, home demolitions, arbitrary arrests, displacements, Israeli expansion, military checkpoints, construction of walls, discrimination, massacres, and bombing of innocent men, women, and children in their own homes. So no, it's not complicated. The Palestinians are a people who have been oppressed and had their lands taken away from them and have been suffering ever since. This is how the events of the past shape the conditions of today. This is why it is important to remember and reflect our history before it repeats itself again. Because Allah knows we don't need it to happen again in another part of the world. May Allah lift the pain and the struggles from our Palestinian brothers and sisters. Ameen.
Israel always denies responsibility. Don't trust the word that the US government says. Don't trust the word that the British government says. And of course, it goes without saying, don't trust the word that Israel says. For most people, it comes very easy to condemn Hamas as despicable murderers. I think it's a more complicated moral question for how you come to grips morally with the actions of people. Most of those militants who burst through the gates of Gaza, they were born into a concentration camp, and they spent the whole of their lives in that concentration camp, among the most densely populated places on God's earth. Nobody was allowed in, nobody was allowed out, with the rarest of exceptions. No jobs, no future. We know for sure one fact. The big variable is Hezbollah and Iran. If they do nothing, Israel will execute its plan of emptying out what they call the northern sector of Gaza And almost certainly they're going to declare that their new security zone. And half of the population of Gaza will be expelled to the south. I think Israel is going to simply say, that's Egypt's problem, it's not our problem, and the US will acquiesce in that.
So what brings you here today? To support Palestinian rights. We as Jews are embarrassed what's happening there in the state of Israel, in the Jewish name. And what's your message to the people of Palestine? They shouldn't give up the struggle. They should continue to fight and not give up the struggle against the state of Israel, because by the end, Palestine will be free, because this is truth, will succeed by the end. What's your message to the people of Palestine?
They should know. We feel very shame what's going on there, especially they're doing everything in our name. In the name of Jews, in the name of the Torah, in the name of God. It's so shameful. We are with you. You have to know. The Zionists are strong. We are weak. But God is on our side. At the end of the day, the Palestinian flag will be on all Palestine, from the river to the sea.
As always, I'm open to your comments and your feedback below. If you think this was useful, please do like and share this video with others that may find it useful. We need to get the conversation moving. I've been going on Twitter Spaces in order to engage with rabbis, imams, those that are from the Zionist side, those that are from the Palestinian side, those are from the Israeli side, to try and further this conversation forward. So follow me on Twitter as well. We've got to do this with peace. We've got to do this with love. We've got to do this with unity. And please do not confuse the acts of a minority of radical people, whether it be a Zionist or a terrorist, with the vast majority of good people that are just trying to live right now, with the acts of governments, with the acts of those leaders that are doing things against what certain people within the government are doing, and those that control military might. It's very easy for us to collect people together into one bucket, but there's a lot more nuance there. And the only way we're going to get to peace is being able to effectively communicate with each other. One thing I've always learned is a great book by Dr. Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The first habit is to start with the end in mind. So think about what you want here when engaging in those communications. And then the second one is to seek first to understand, then be understood. Easier said than done, I know. We all make mistakes, but a commitment from all of us will help us drive us in a better direction, because my biggest fear right now is that we're about to escalate and this could go global. And I think we are at the start of something, and there's only one person that can change the course of events right now. And that is Biden is the only person that has the collective influence in order to force a certain decision. And right now he is choosing the path to destruction and world war. And all of us that may be cheering along while you're seeing such suffering, because you see something from a different perspective, this may be hitting your home very quickly. And so that's why I think it's very important for us all to be engaged. Anybody affected by any of the death and any of the destruction on any side, my thoughts are with you. And my personal faith believes in the hereafter, which means that life is about preparation for your ultimate, judgment, or whatever it may be in your faith or your belief, or reincarnation, or whatever it is for you. So anybody that is following a righteous path and a path to the truth, even if they're wrong, as long as their intention is in the right place, hopefully they will be going to a better place. And anyone that's suffering from anyone that has died from these atrocities, my thought is with you, and hopefully you can come to terms with a better relationship with death, so that some of this can have some meaning, and then we can draw some meaning around where this goes next. Peace.